Plato said that when you go to Kemet school, you became more alert. You may wake up, your spirit wake up. And you became a more human being. That's your character is built in a school. We must know Netcher. You see, maybe in the future we need to know some Hieroglyphic too. We need to know Netcher.
All right. ETM Hotep, peace. Shout out to everyone. Hope everyone is having a very good afternoon. In Rani Kemet, we would say Mashiru Nafir, which is good afternoon. All right. Beka Nafir, good morning. Gareh Nafir is good night. That's FYI for everyone. Beka Nafir, good morning. Mashiru Nafir, good afternoon. Gareh Nafir, good night. All right. So always say Heru Nafir, good day. Ra Nafir, good day. As well. That's optional as well. But ETM Hotep, which is welcome and peace. This your brother Wujau Menib Edi Ma'at, and you're tuned into the Seshu channel. And welcome to Kemet and Chill. So we're in the afternoon, Kemet and Chill. So if you don't know by now, the Kemet and Chill series, just kind of made that up on the fly in terms of a series. And so this series is just a series of open discussions, Q&A, where we let the chat and everyone else drive the conversation. So we're passengers in this on this trip. Okay, so it's not so much that we're coming with a pre-planned presentation or anything like that. Not for this series. Okay, so just so you all will get used to the different series of live streams that we have. All right, so Kemet and Chill. So hopefully everyone is doing good. And yeah, I appreciate anybody who's tuned in the afternoon. And I'm gonna do this as often as I can, because in the afternoon, when I take my breaks from my professional work, I come live and hang out with you guys hang out with me and anybody else on the panel and things like that. So we just want to keep this going and keep this series going. And plus we've gotten very good positive feedback, and people have been inboxing me questions because and I do apologize for this, but sometimes when I'm sharing my screen and explaining something, I'm not looking at the chat. And then if the chat scrolls, because you know how in the chat the chat will have a life of its own, and people will have a conversation, and it scrolls up. So I may miss questions or comments, and so some people have inboxed me with screenshots showing me their questions, that they asked that I missed. Like, hey, you missed my question. You think you could answer my question? So the brother Buxy hit me up. He's the latest one, but he's not the only one to do that. So I get that often. So I apologize for missing people's comments and questions. But hey, you can hit me up like you're doing, and I definitely don't mind coming back to it or whatever the case is. So yeah, so I want to keep this series going, just open discussion, let you all drive the conversation, and I'll just share what I know, answer what I can. If I don't know, I'll say I don't know. If I can't answer, I can't answer. And while we're live, we can look at things together. All right. And then also, based on other people's channels and what's being said on other channels, I noticed that we're getting questions as well. So, based on conversations, whether it's checking for my opinion or our opinion about something that they heard somewhere else, or to fact check something, to asking is something correct, or whatever the case is. So we get that also, and we welcome it all. We welcome it all, and people who come and email and in the spirit of making a correction, and we welcome that. We definitely welcome that as well. All right, so there it is. Let me actually get the chat on the screen so we can see all of the chat comments. So shout out to everyone. I usually do like a roll call, but I see quite a few people. So yeah, so peace Cedric, peace to Strife, Boom, Donnie Williams, Plasma Prophet, Brother Zane. Now mind you, the chat link, the panel link is in the chat. So click the panel link if you want to come on, and Peace Master Khalik. Click the panel link if you come on. This is an open panel. We don't discriminate. We only discriminate against the foolishness. All right. So I mean, I don't even have to say that. You don't even hear me even talk about that here, or whatever. We don't have to deal with that because we run this machine a certain way over here. All right, because things get out of hand. I see different conversations, different platforms and things, but no, it's definitely not happening here. We want to keep this. We want to have fun, but we want to keep this educational and forward moving. So, all right, that's enough from me. I'm just saying peace to everybody. So let's dive in. Let's just go for it and dive in. Who has the first comment, question? Now, let me actually, it would be appropriate for me to deal with people who did inbox me who I missed, question that I missed. So I'm going to start with Buxy, but let me see if Buxy is in the chat. Because we've gone live, and Buxy, by the way, he's over in the UK. So the time zone is different, and he may not be on right now, and I believe he is. There he is, Buxy Hotep. Let me know if you're still there. I'll deal with yours first. But yeah, fire away. Let's spark it up. Let's we could study together. But you know what? I'm gonna challenge you all, because we get a certain crowd or chat. We get a certain hang, people that hang and everything. And I like to push people. So let me do this. Let me start with this real quick. I'm going to share something with y'all. So first, let me say this. Ancient Egypt is as of 1832, I believe, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong. As of 1832, that date sticks in my head. The beginning of Egyptology. I know 1822, the decipherment credited to Champollion, but Egyptology is a bona fide, real, serious study. It was organized as a serious study ever since the decipherment of Sesh, Medew, Netcher, aka hieroglyphs, the hieroglyphic writing system. Um, and so I'm saying that because we have to take it serious, like a serious study, no different than we would take chemistry, engineering, computer programming, computer engineering, physics, astrophysics, medicine, and biology. You know, um, hard sciences, soft sciences, mushy sciences, whatever sciences you want to call it. The study of ancient Egypt is a serious undertaking, and we have to approach it in a serious way. And but the question is, are people doing that? And from my experience and my observations over the last 10 years plus years, at least on social media, um, I would say no, based on the arguments and commentaries that I'm hearing on over the years and things and so-called debates. People are not really taking it serious as they should. And so this is what I'm gonna share with you all. Let's get the chat off so y'all can see this pretty big. Okay, so this is a website called egyptologyforum.org. So if you're not familiar with this, get familiar with this. All right. So any real student of ancient Egyptian culture, there's certain tools you're gonna need. There's certain tools and attitudes that you need to have. You need to have a certain attitude, but you have to have tools. All right. And so this is one out of many websites that you should bookmark, because what you want to do is come to websites like this one and others, and get every single book mentioned in the bibliographies of these websites. So, for example, this matter of fact, let me blow this up so y'all can see these names better. So, this is an online Egyptological bibliographies, databases, search engines, and other resources. This was compiled in 2012. So, it's 10 years old. So 10 years old. This is 10 years old. Now, I was put onto this a long time ago, and this is in my bookmarks, been in my bookmarks since forever. And so if you go down this list, it says selected bibliographies for ancient Egypt, general bibliography. So this is just general stuff. If you click on everything, you will see the names of books, authors, and so on and so forth. So a serious student will collect all of these resources. Collect all of the resources here. And as soon as I said serious student, my Siri activated. That's crazy. So yeah, so I'm showing you this because this is the kind of investment that you have to put in. You have to put investment in your study, even if And I'm not expecting people to get a PhD in Egyptology, bachelor's or master's degree. But if you're gonna study it, then do it. Then do it right. Don't treat it like you can microwave it. Don't treat it like some hand-me-down pushover type of topic in studies. That's the problem with the circus community and the conversations that I've witnessed over the years and that I've been experienced and even chimed in on. People are not taking it as serious as they should. So here's an example of some general bibliographies. Here's selected bibliographies, one topic only. So here's general things about Egypt. So you may get books that talk about multiple things about Egypt in this first set. And here, one topic, single topic only. So you have Sinuhe, which is Tale of Sinuhe, systematic bibliography of Deir el Medina database, Ancient Nubia, a selected bibliography and recent works. So I'm just gonna click on one. Up, site can't be reached. Yeah, by the way, some of these are you're not gonna, it's gonna be a dead link because this particular site I'm showing you is 10 years old, and so some of these will have dead links. But the point remains is you go to websites like this to build up your bibliography, build up your library, build up your set of tools, build up your research materials, because the point I want to drive home that I always say is that I feel that a lot of people waste too much time with the shenanigans in these conversations, adversarial fussing matches and debates and so on and so forth. We are so far behind on information when it comes to many things. So I know Egypt is a big topic for me because that's my area of focus, but there's other cultures that I'm sure people are studying throughout the continent of Africa, West African cultures, North African cultures, Central African, South African, you name it. And we need to snap out of this child's play, behavior dealing with these topics, because we need to realize the reality on the ground is that we are far behind. And I say that because all of these books right here, all of these different resources, look at all these. I'm gonna scroll through. Here's another section, online bibliography database for Egyptology and papyrology. So we have the TLA, of course, the Heidelberg Egyptological database, and all of this. And if I were to click on any one of these, you could drill down into more information about it. And we got databases for Egyptological dissertations, etc. So I can keep on going, keep on scrolling. And so this is what you want to invest in. This is where it takes money as well. It takes financial investment to purchase all of these books and papers and have access to databases and things like that. This is what donations should be for. Not just some, donate for this or that or whatever, support this, click that, show some love and all that other kind of stuff. This is where the war chest should be focused on, things like this. And it should slap us in the face of the reality of how far behind we are, because all of this work is done, it's been done, it's old, with mixed in with new, but we're not the ones doing it. By we, I mean those people in the so-called conscious community, Black Power, RBG, all the whole thing, the whole black conversation. It's not that many of us that will be listed in this grand list of resources. And a lot of things that we talk about online, the work has already been done. A lot of times, and we all got to be humble and just know that, listen, we have only scratched the surface to have a representation in this work. Because these folks have been done, like the stuff that we talk about, we're referencing people who been put the work in. So for example, I was gonna click on one. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Well, let me just click on any one. Okay, the Karnak hyperstyle. Let's see if this is a broken link. Hopefully this one won't be broken. Okay, now this is University of Memphis, and the link doesn't go directly to the page it used to go to, but I'm sure we could trace it and find it out, but it would take me too long, so I'm not going to even do that. I'm trying to find one that, all right, here's, let's just see. I'm just trying to find another one. See, a lot of these, this particular site I'm sharing with you, like I said, it's 10 years old. Here's the Theban mapping project. That website, I discussed that in previous videos. Look, the actual site page itself, that was attached to that link is not found, but the site is still there. The Theban mapping site is still there. So even that alone, you had to go through and filter and sift through Tomb of Jehudi. Let's see if I can get anyone that's going to still be a valid link. Okay, Project Jehudi. So look at that. See, you come here, and a lot of this stuff is not in English. That's another thing. The discipline of Egyptology is multilingual in terms of resources. You got French, books written in French, books written in German, mainly French and German. French and German. So you have to, better take a 101 on French and German, or get to know how to use translators, Google Translate, and what have you. But anyway, so my point, I don't want to dwell on this too much, but the takeaway from this, what I'm saying, is we are too far behind, goofing off, behaving the way that I see people behave, and talking like people talk, in the manner in which they do. They treat this like this some puppy games play. The Egyptian culture should be given the respect it deserves in terms of proper methodology and investigation, research, and even in the output of conversations. All right, so don't allow it to happen around you. If you understand and you agree with what I'm saying, speak up. You know what I'm saying? People try to microwave things and whatever. Like, nah, that's not how you do that. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to kind of share that first. So all right, so back to that's my intro rant. I always have an intro rant. Intro rant. All right, so let's go back up here, and mind you, the link to the panel is in the chat. I said I was gonna get to Buxy's question first. All right, so let's do that. Let us do that. So Buxy asked a question, and he inboxed me, so I can't share it. Let me pull up his question again. So he sent me a screenshot. He was like, "See, I asked you in the in the chat." So he asks, "Can you make a clear distinction between the spirit and soul, scientifically or biologically? Difference between the spirit and the soul." All right, so let's do it this way. Let me pull up. I'm gonna share my screen. So we're gonna do this together. I'm gonna share my screen. Alrighty. So what I'm pulling up, what I'm showing is, now everything I showed, man, you know, when you come to this channel, the Sesh channel, make sure you have a pen and pad. All right, that should be off the top. Pen and pad, pen and pad, pen and pad, pen and pad, notepad, text pad, whatever you got on your computer, your iPad, tablet, whatever. All right. Because like I said, on these Kemet and chill open discussions, you all are going to drive the conversation. So I'm not, on this series, I'm not coming with a pre-planned presentation. We're going to do that different series, but for this, so this is like, what do you call it? Impromptu. This is like ad hoc. This is ad hoc stuff. So whatever I share, jot it down. Whatever I share, whatever we walk through, go through, and this and that, make sure you write it down. But obviously it's going to be in the archives of the video as well. So anyway, this is the website everyone should be familiar with, Etym Online, ETYM online.com. One word, Etym Online. All right, you should have it bookmarked by now. If you don't, shame on you. You should have this handy. It's a good resource. Now let me just say this about etymology. We can't use etymology incorrectly Understand that etymology is the study of the history of words, and the history of a word will connect to its form and meaning. That's what a word is. A word is three things wrapped up into one. And I've had a video on this channel where we talk about the mechanics of language and what is an actual word. But etymology is the history of a word. And so words can have shifts in semantic or meaning. And so if you see the history of the word, most words, with few exceptions, but most words will retain its base meaning all throughout its life cycle. It may have shifted nuances and expansions, but you can see and connect the dots. And that's the good and beautiful thing about looking up the etymology of words. You can uncover its original denotation and then all of its various connotations and usages. Okay, so that's that. So let us look up the word spirit. And I know I have to make this bigger so you all can see it. Is that big enough? That should be big enough. So I typed in spirit, and this is what comes up as a noun. It's from, the current version is from the mid 13th century. And in quotes, they have, the sense, what they call a sense or the meaning. Animating or vital principle in man and animals. From Anglo-French, spirit. From French, esprit, spirit or soul. Now notice this. Notice that they put spirit, comma, soul. And in modern times, spirit and soul is so confusing because we tend to use these words interchangeably. But that may be to our that may be why we're confused about these things and why people are just so have difference of opinions of so many things related to spiritual things. But anyway, so say they have spirit and soul together. So that would give you an impression that spirit and soul is the same thing. It says, and directly from Latin spiritus, a breathing, respiration. You see the word spir there, respiration, and of the wind, breath of God, hence inspiration. So we have inspiration or spirit there, breath of life, hence life. Also, disposition, character, high spirit, vigor, courage, pride, arrogance. Related to spirare, to breathe, perhaps from Proto-Indo-European, spes, to blow. Okay, source of blah, blah, blah. All right. And then it goes on to explain these things. But it's good to look up the etymology of these words just so you can get that. Now let's do the same thing for soul. Okay? We're going to do the same thing for soul. So you all kind of keep this one in mind. We'll do the same thing for soul. Look up soul. Hit it. And it looks like it has two senses. When you see into, it's in your dictionaries they have what's called senses, where a word will have two different entries. So let's look at the first one. So a substantial entity believed to be that in each person which lives, feels, thinks, and wills. Old English soul, spiritual. See for soul they put that word spiritual in there. An emotional part of a person. Animate existence, life, living being, from Proto-Germanic. And I'm not going to try to pronounce all these words, you all, so you all can see them, but I'm definitely going to skip the pronunciation. So it's from Proto-Germanic, which is source of Saxon, Old Norse, Old Frisian, Middle Dutch, Old High German, German, etc. And it says of uncertain origin. Sometimes said to mean originally coming from or belonging to the sea, because that was supposed to be the stopping place of the soul before birth and after death. If so, it would be from Proto-Germanic sawaz, which is sea. Klein explains this as from a lake whatever. Meaning spirit of a deceased person is attested from Old English from 971 as a synonym for person, individual, human being, as in every living soul. It dates from early 14th century. And then they give other iterations of it. It says, let's go here, related. So it shows you. Now let's go to sense number 2. It says instinctive quality felt by black persons as an attribute. That's that soul power that James Brown. See, this is the James Brown definition right here. In 1946, jazz slang from soul, also from the sense our soul brother, soul sister, soul food, soul music, essentially gospel music with a girl, etc., etc. All right. So just from that alone, what can you all deduce is the difference between spirit and soul? Did this clear up anything? I'm not saying it does, but I'm asking you all, does this clear up anything, or does it make it worse? So, there's a delay, so I'm going to keep on talking, but I'm going to look out for you all's answers. All right. But let me continue though. Because if you answer like me, this didn't help. So Bucksy, if you listening, I know you like, well, that didn't help me at all. That did not help me at all. Right? So what you do from here, because you can't microwave stuff all the time. People got to just throw that microwave oven in the trash. But you have to go to where the words are coming from. So we know that spiritus is from the Latin. And so you got to get your tools. You got to get your Latin dictionary available out. And if it comes from Old German, you got to get those kind of dictionaries, because those will go in more in depth on the usage and the meanings, rather than a survey type of dictionary, which is etymological dictionary such as this. It's just giving you just data in the form of reporting listing, like this is from this from this. But if you want more detail, you got to go into those languages themselves and its dictionaries. All right. But let's go back for spirit for a second. I'm going to show you all something. So spirit. Now remember, it's the animating or vital principle in man or animals. So the very word animal is from the same word as we get animation from, which means to move. Okay, to move. And humans are animals. We are animals. And what separates, or why we're animals, is because we are distinguished from plants. So we have two major kingdoms in living organisms or biological taxa: the plant kingdom and the animal kingdom. But the reason why the animal kingdom is named the animal kingdom is because those living organisms can move on their own volition. So we as human beings, we can move on our own volition. Plants cannot. Plants do not move on their own. They have to be transported, blown, the wind blows them, and or animals, or whatever the case is. So the driving sense or meaning behind animals is the ability to move. And so spirit is being associated with this ability in man. What is causing man to have this ability to move? And so what people identify a spirit is energy. That's what the most common idea about a spirit is. If you ask somebody, well, what's a spirit? They'll say energy. Or they'll say a vibe. And what is a vibe? Vibe is short for vibration. Vibration is energy. So they say, nah, I don't like her vibe. Or I don't like his vibe. I don't like his energy. Nah, he has a messed up spirit. Nah, there's something wrong with his spirit. See, all of these become generally synonymous in our conversations. All right. But now, spirit is associated with wind or the breath. Okay, the breath. Now, the difference between spirit and soul. I'm just gonna answer because I was trying to just show you all like the way in which you would investigate this. But the difference between spirit and soul is one is the causal agent, and the other one is the recipient. One is the cause of something going on, and the other one is the actual thing going on or its recipient. Difference between soul and spirit. So to breathe or wind was likened unto a human being because our breath and wind and air and so on and so forth, or the blowing of something, causes things to move. When you blow on something, the object you're blowing on moves, but you can't see what's causing it to move. All you see is the movement itself. And you know something caused it to move that you can't see. And that thing that you can't see, people are calling spirit. All right, that's what they're calling it. And so just understand that. And you can't see it. So this is where, you know, the spooky aspect of it comes into play. But mind you, what I'm saying, that in order for a spirit to be real, even though you can't see, in order for this to be confirmed, you have to see something affected by it. If wind blows and you can't see the wind blowing, but it has no effect on an object to be detected, then you will never know that the wind is blowing. It will not exist. And so with spirit always comes some kind of reaction to it. And so the animating factor of animals, this animating aspect, the spirit part of it is whatever is causing it, even though we can't see it, whatever's causing that. And people associate it with energy. And they do so incorrectly. They incorrectly interpret energy. People think energy or a spirit is an entity when they liken it unto energy, and that would be an error. Energy is a measurement. It is not an entity. It's a measurement, no different than height. So if you measure an object and it's 12 inches tall, it's 12 inches high in height. Height is not an entity. Energy is not an entity. Energy is the measurement of the ability to do work, and it's mainly expressed in units of joules, or in the case of inside the body, calories, or whatever the case is. They're different units of measurement depending on the context, but it is simply a measurement. So when people identify spirit as energy and then talk about spirits as if they're entities, they're way off. They're way off. It's not. It's the ability to move. That's what it is. And then you get into force. They say, well, it's a force. It's a power. And though all of those will be incorrect, because a force is a pressure on an object causing it to move. If an object doesn't move, there's no force. The force is the pressure. If it moves, then work was done. So let me, and I know I'm sharing this on the screen. Now mind you, I've covered this before. I've covered this, man, this has been like 4 years ago. I did a whole, I should find that video and play it. Let me see if I can find the video. I'm going to find the video and play it. It's a short video I did. I'm going to find it. And I'm going to try to keep on talking while I'm looking for it. It's a video I did. You know, I just created this character called Try to Told You or something like that. It was a funny thing. I was just bored, and I did a video about about this issue, and it probably take me too long to find this video. Tried to told you. And I don't even remember how I even spelled tried to told you. That's a weird thing. But anyway, I'll find it. I'm gonna keep on talking though. So I'm gonna explain it. So here's the thing. Energy is the measurement of the ability to do work. When people describe spirit, they say it's an energy. So we're gonna go down the list. If it's energy, then it's simply a measurement of the ability to do work. If it's a force, then it's pressure being placed on an object. It's the pushing and pulling on an object. That's what force is. The pushing and pulling on an object. All right? If the object that is being pushed or pulled moves, then work was done. And remember, energy is the measurement of the ability to do work. So if something does not move, there is no way to measure the work. And energy is the ability to do that work. So having the ability and actually conducting the work are two different things. And so this is why people get lost on the topics of any spiritual topic of ancestors, spirits, and stuff like that. And this is why things can get spooky really quick, and what turns people off. And this is what gives rise to ideologies, atheistic ideologies and things, because people don't understand what this is really dealing with. There's no need to deal with anything spooky. We just gotta deal with these things head on and what they are. But I think we found it. Give me a second here, y'all, because I want to show you all this video. Yep. All right. Now I know I have this. All right, I'm gonna download it real quick. Let's see if I can download it. Yep, download video. Yes, good old Facebook. I did it on Facebook. Facebook allowed me to download it, and I'm going to play it for you all. It's short. Y'all hanging out. We're all hanging out. Shout out to everybody who's hanging out. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to play it. Let me take this off the screen. Okay, so y'all ready? I want y'all to hear this and see it.
I tried to tell you here. So let me break down this spirituality. So what is spirit? Huh? Well, spirit is breath. It's wind. It's breath. It's from Latin, spiritus. Breath, wind. Okay. So what is a spiritual force? Well, you first have to understand force. What is force? Force is the pushing or pulling applied to an object. The pushing and pulling applied to an object. That's what force is. So now spiritual force, spirit being wind or breath, is the pushing or pulling applied to an object. Spiritual force. That's what wind does. It's a force applied to an object. Spiritual force. That's what it is. Now, when force is applied to an object and it causes the movement of that object or the displacement of that object, work is considered to be done. So work is force times the distance. That's what work is. That's it. Okay, let me show you some spiritual work. Spirit is breath or wind, and force is the pushing and pulling on an object. Okay, remember that. And force being applied to an object calling it to displace is considered work. So here's some spiritual work. You see that? Breath moving an object causes work. To summarize, spirit is breath or wind, and when it's applied to an object, it becomes spiritual force. And if the object is displaced or moves, it becomes spiritual work. An ability or capacity to do work is called energy, spiritual energy. I tried to told you. I tried to told you. Okay, one more time. Spiritual work, simplified. Here it is. Spiritual work. Tried to told you.
Boy, this boy, I am a fool. Look, I did that. When was that? That was like 4 years ago, 3 years ago. I don't even know. But listen, I hope y'all. I mean, I was bored and I was addressing it to make it real easy to understand, and hopefully everybody, you could laugh at it, and whatnot. But it is very simple, and it's very true. So Bucksy, I hope you got that, because that video basically explained well, it's basically explains spirit, because we hear these terms: spirit, spiritual force, spiritual work. Like, I'm gonna do some spiritual work. Let me go home so I could do some spiritual work. I'm doing some spiritual work over the weekend, or spiritual energy, spiritual force, spiritual work, spirit. That's what we hear a lot. And so that video, I just summarized what it really is when it comes to that. When people describe spirit as energy or whatever, that's what is being referred to. Then you got people who will describe spirit as if it's an entity. And that throws things off. And so there's a lot of confusion, and there's a lot of quote unquote spiritual people in the circus community. But how spiritual are they? Like, what is that? What is a spirit made of? Think about that. If an ancestor, I see Osara has popped in here. Just gonna finish my spill real quick before pass the mic to you. But so for example, everyone will generally say ancestors are spirits. So spirit becomes, or ancestor becomes, synonymous with spirit in terms of what they are. Like, okay, my ancestors, spiritual ancestors, or ancestors who are spirits. Okay, fine, right? That will imply that they're an entity. And if you ask them, well, what are they made of? Like, what is the substance that they're made of? Because if they're an entity, they have to have some kind of ontological existence separate from another entity's existence. What is the separator? Because human beings, we exist separate from one another physically. We have physical bodies, we have skin, right? We could stand next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, and we will not like merge with each other, or we can't walk through each other. We can't walk through walls or anything. So there's demarcations and barriers and borders around our body. We have barriers, built-in barriers. So what is the border or barrier of a spirit that separates one spiritual ancestor from another? Or are all the spiritual ancestors just one big blob called an entity? What is it made of? See, people, those are like valid questions when you describe spirits or ancestors as these entities. Like, okay, what is their mode of existence? How do they exist? How do they move? Do they get around? Do they eat? Do they have a spiritual digestive system? Do they defecate? Do they what? Do they perspire? Respiration? Perspiration? Defecation? Like what? Like what? What do they do? Anyway. So Bucksy, hopefully that now, I'm going to have a future show where I'm going to go in on this ancestral veneration, the leaving of offerings, food offerings, and what all of that. I want to uncover some realities behind these quote unquote ritual and spiritual practices involving ancestors. So I want to get into that, and I'm going to do a future show on that. where I'm gonna just deal with that one topic. But right now, this is open. This is open discussion, Q&A, Kemet and chill. So I'm gonna welcome Asar Motep on the panel and pass the mic. I'm sure Asar has something to say about this spiritual or the word spirit or the fact that people misrepresent it as entities.
Oh no, I was just traveling these internet streets and saw the lights open. I mean, the lights on.
Oh,
So,
all right.
I'm just peeking in. So I caught the tail end of well, I guess I was still on. I caught the tail end of your commentary in terms of etymology. Um, but in regards to spirit,
Mm-hmm.
what I've come to understand as a result of my etymological work on African languages is that what we're calling spirit essentially is that aspect of the self that is essential, hidden, or not necessarily hidden, because that implies that a creator purposely, hid it from view. But it is not what we consider the spirit is not part of our normal experience in the world. And but it empowers and animates and gives everything its essential character. It's kind of the catch-all for what a spirit is. And as we know, with like with the concepts of Orisha and Netcher, that the cognates have been defined as such as anything that is not able to be seen, but essentially is able to do work to make things happen and move, is essentially what is called a spirit. And the words for spirit in many ancestral African languages, e- the words for liver, the words for heart, the words for you know intestines, or just any of the major organs or lungs, and have been used ultimately for words for spirit, and they're used as a metaphor essentially for the core. Like, when we say our core, what are our core parts of our body that are essential to us living? And in reality is damn near every part of our body. But some parts of your body you can lose without necessarily losing your life. you know um, but if you lose a lot of blood, if you lose your ability to breathe, if your heart fails, etc., etc., you uh, can die, or at least more quickly. And so that, with that understanding, the the ancients understood that whatever is essentially animating us, it is part of our core in terms of our overall being, in the same way that our heart, our liver, our lungs, and chest are essential in our makeup. So it's almost kind of used metaphorically, but they all refer to ultimately an an essential part. Now, with that being said, one could argue, using modern analyses, that simply a spirit is a collection of atoms in a particular type of configuration. Not necessarily, because invisible does not necessarily mean transparent. Again, the argument is that it is not part of our everyday experience, but we know that it is atoms that make up our core, and that define every aspect of who we are. Now, this is an ongoing debate in science on whether, for example, what we're calling the mind is a real thing. And if the mind is a real thing, what is, just kind of like the questions that you asked earlier, what does this make up? From what does it emerge? Or is what we're calling the mind and personality simply the emergence, or emerges as a result of us being born, and is just a collection of experiences which die off when we die, right? um and so, there's some debates, some philosophic and in psychological and biological debates. Now, I'm of the argument that thought, or I have my hypothesis is that thought, it emerges in the same way that particles emerge. Like, there is a plane, a field, a mind field, a thought field, a consciousness field, and that the agitations of that field, produces thoughts, as a result of electrical movement, and the synapses in the brain and all this other kind of stuff. And however, in extended in my hypothesis is that this field is not large. It's like the weak nuclear force in an atom. Like, it's very small, and this is what generally prevents us from reading each other's mind. And so we have to create symbols in order to communicate with each other. That's the reason for language. Like, all the words that we're saying now are just symbols, and these symbols are what we, like, how do we articulate what's in our head? And in that, what is that question? What is in our head? What is a thought? And those types of questions, kept many of our ancestors, and myself included, up at night, trying to figure out, who is Sar Imhotep. What does he really look like? Matter of fact, Foucault has a lecture online. I think it's the only lecture in existence, which is very odd, as long as he's been in living when he was alive before 2013, that he talks about that from a Congo perspective. Like, he asks the question, who is a Foucault? Has anyone ever seen Foucault? Because what you're seeing is a box, what you're seeing is a shell.
Mm-hmm.
But
mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
Now, I was gonna say, so that's where wind becomes a metaphor for the reality of whatever it is. So, like, air and wind is invisible, but yet it produces a result. Mm-hmm. So we see the effect that wind has on an object, but we don't see the wind itself. And so that aspect of the causal agency of movement, we see the movement and we see the object and we see the effects of it, but we don't see the causal agent. And so it's always hidden. And that's where the metaphoric use of wind, which is what the Latin speakers was conveying. Spiritus is wind to us, or in English. And even, see, when you, and I know, like, when we read these holy books or whatever, we see it says the Spirit of God moved. There's always some movement with spirit, mm-hmm. and whatnot. And so the question was the difference between soul and spirit, and I was getting to there's several words around there that we have to define. We have to define the word psyche, anime, or the word from the word animal, animation. Um, what else? I said spiritus or spirit already, and even the word behavior. All of these things relate, and if we were to examine all of those words, we could paint a better picture of what what the realities are, because these are aspects that we can't like grasp and hold on to. So there's a lot of metaphoric or figurative ways to document and explain these things, and people are taking it literally. Like they think that, like I said, a spirit is energy one, and then they think energy is an entity, and only and people that follow that pathway, they're going in the wrong direction. But a lot of people do it, you know. Um, so yeah, I mean, but let me see something, cause I have these. Let me just share this real quick. We're gonna walk through these as fast as I can make it, cause I don't have too much time. I'm gonna probably come back live later on, or join somebody else's live or whatever, and do some YouTube hopping. But while I do have time, let me see. Where is it? Where is it? Give me a second, y'all. Nope, not that one. Here we go. This one. Okay. So now I've done a video on this before. So these are like notes from the video, because if y'all be hanging out with me, y'all know that I create notes right here on the fly. Sometimes on these different live streams. So I'm not gonna read this like a presentation. I'm just gonna skip around to revisit this conversation. So like, one thing I want to point out, because people talk about spiritual science, right? Spiritual science. And so if we understand what science is, which is two basic definitions, nothing heavy and nothing deep. How science is two things at one time. One, it's the methods and tools used to know when something is known, i.e., tools of discernment. So that's one thing. What science is a set of tools. And then two, it's the corpus or body of knowledge acquired and accumulated by using those tools. And that's, we can expound on the definition, but that's the gist of what science is, right? And then spirituality, when we understand the use of the word, or the dictionary definition of the word, it says that it's the quality of being concerned with the human spirit or soul, which doesn't tell us too much. It just explains the ality part of it. But then it says the quality of being concerned with material or physical things. Now I have this here opposed to, because people say spiritual science, and science is number two, but number one is what spirituality is. And so there's kind of like a contradiction there when people say spiritual science, and whatnot. But it doesn't need to be, if we properly understand science and we properly understand what a spirit is, or what's being trying to convey with it. So I just want to go over a couple of these words that I've mentioned. I already have that. Psychology and spirit. Psychology. So what is psychology? Psychology is a systematic study of the mind and behavior. The systematic study of the spiritus and animus. Okay? The systematic study of spirit and soul. Now, soul is connected to the word animus, and spirit is spiritus. All right, so just bear with me on this. I'll skip all of that. That was nomenclature. Where is it? Okay, here we go. Psyche. So the Latin word animus, which is the source of our English word animal, and Greek suke, and I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, suki, started out meaning breath. Now I want y'all to pay attention. The word psyche. So remember, we're talking about the word psyche. So animus and suki started out meaning breath and developed semantically to soul, spirit. And they always share the soul and spirit together in these definitions. And that's confusing. English adopted it via Latin psyche in the mid 17th century, but it did not really begin to come into its own until the middle 19th century, when the development of the sciences of the mind saw it pressed into service in such compound forms as psychology, first recorded 1693, and psychiatry, 1846, which etymologically means healing of the mind. All right, so keep that in mind. Spirit, we already went through spirit. Spirit originally meant breath. It was derived from the verb spirare, which means breathe, and we get a ton of English words from that: aspire, conspire, expire, inspire, perspire, respire, transpire, or respire and transpire, which probably came ultimately from the prehistoric Indo-European base spes or spes, imitative of the sound of blowing or breathing out. I'm gonna skip let's read this. It's a source of the Old Church Slavic and Serbo-Croat, pistadi, hiss, and Old Norse fisa, which means fart. But in the Augustan period, it gradually began to take over as a word for soul. So notice that it took over for soul, and this is where you get that comma definition all the time, where you can see spirit, comma, soul everywhere. It took over for soul from anima, which is source of English animal, animate, which itself originally denoted breath, and then so on. So spirit took over anima, and you see the connection on the breath to breath combination there, and hence in English today we say spirit, soul as if they're equal today. So here's the word animate. Etymologically, an animal is a being which breathes. Its immediate source was the Latin adjective animalis, having a soul. Now see, remember, soul is anima, so having a soul. A derivative of the noun anima, breath, soul, which also gave English the verb and adjective animate. Anima is a member of a set of related words in which the notions of breath, wind, and spirit, and remember spirit is wind or breath as well, and life, are intimately connected. For instance, Greek animos, wind, possible of English source, animon. Latin animus, spirit, mind, courage, anger, source of English animosity. You know, we get angry at people. That's animosity. And animus, Sanskrit, anti-breathe, Old English, Othean, breathe, Swedish, Gothic, to breathe out. The breath sense is presumably primarily the spirit, life, since a metaphorical extension of it. That's what we were just talking about as a metaphor. Let's keep going. Soul. Behind the word soul lies an ancient notion of the soul as something fleeting or mercurial. For its prehistoric Germanic ancestor, Sawalo, was related to the Greek, and I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, quick moving, meaning fleeing. Its modern Germanic cousins included Germanic seal, Dutch zeal, Swedish, and Danish, etc. And that's pretty much all there is on soul. But remember, it's something fleeting or mercurial. Behavior. I'm just going to go through these words, and y'all can come back to this. I'm just going to read these quickly, right? Y'all can come back to it because all of these words are important to discuss any one of them. And right now we're discussing spirit and stuff to have a better understanding of these different components. And you're gonna come out at the other end of this is that the ancient Egyptians, they had the right idea of breaking down the human composition into multiple entities or parts. The Kaibit Kat, the Kat Kaibit Ka, Sahu Ib, Ren, Ak, Sekhem, etc., etc. And you're gonna see it unfold. What I'm reading is the unfolding of that kind of idea, or trying to document and understand this stuff by the ancient Egyptians. So behavior, we got to behave oneself, originally meant literally to have oneself, is to own it in a particular way, to have oneself in a particular way. Have being used here in the sense of hold or comport. The be prefix is an intensive prefix. Of particular interest is the way in which the word preserves in aspic the 15th century pronunciation of have in stress contexts. For much of its history, behave has been used with reference to a person's bearing and public dignity and the modern connotations of propriety, of goodness versus naughtiness, are a relevant recent 19th century development. The noun behavior was formed on analogy with the verb from an earlier havior, a variant of aver, which means possession, to have something, like to own it, possess it, from the nominal use of the old French verb avir or avoir, to have. So, again, behavior is to have oneself in a particular way. All right. Mind. Mind is a member of a large and diverse family of English words, including Mandarin mathematics. Check that out. Mind is connected to the word mathematics. Memory and reminisce, that go back ultimately to the Indo-European based men, to think or think. Amongst its other descendants were Latin mens, mind, source of English mental, could we say mental mind, and prehistoric Germanic, skip that pronunciation, formed of a collective prefix ga. This passed into Old English as gemind, but its prefix was dropped in the early Middle English period, giving the modern English mind. So the ga prefix dropped and we have mind, and that's why we now spell it M-I-N-D. Historically, memory has been as important an element in the word's meaning as mental faculty, but it now survives mainly in the derived verb remind. To remind somebody is to remember something. All right, so that's mind. Then I went to energy. We already did that. Matter, tangible, evident, emotion. Let me read emotion. And then we have experience and person. I'm not trying to read all of these things, but all of these are in my opinion useful and necessary to really hash out any conversation on spiritual things and whatnot, how it relates to the mind and all this other kind of stuff, to kind of sort these things out. But I'm just going to read emotion. It says the semantic notion underlying emotion is of applying physical movement metaphorically to strong feeling is an ancient one. Latin used the phrase modus anima, literally movement of the spirit. Now notice that they say the Latin word anima, but they put in English spirit. You see what happens today? We really butcher that stuff up, because anima was for soul, but the word spiritus replaced anima, so now we say spirit. So Bucksy, I hope you listening in. So modus anima literally mean movement of the spirit in this sense. Emotion itself is a post-classical Latin formation. It comes ultimately from Vulgar Latin ex movere, literally to move out. Ex meaning out and movere, move. Hence excite, a compound verb formed from the prefix ex, out, and movere, move. A source of English move. In French, it became, and my French pronunciation is terrible, and English borrowed its derived noun emotion, but at first used it only in a sense of moving or agitation. The waters continuing in the caverns caused the emotion or earthquake. What else? And metaphorically extended political agitation or disturbance, a sense now preserved only in emute or emute, another derivative from French, however that's pronounced. It was not until the 17th century that the sense strong feeling really came into fore. The back formation emote is a 20th century phenomenon of U.S. origin. So we can see, so I hope you all can see how these words are interconnected with one another, describing some aspect of the same thing in a different way, like how these things are functioning interactively, whatever that thing is. All right, that one spirit you can't see, that's why they metaphorize it as wind. The movement, which is the result of something. Remember, I defined work. Work is defined as the force times distance. So when you apply a pulling or pushing pressure on an object, if it travels a distance in any direction, work is done. And energy is the measurement of the ability to do work. And so when we say spiritual energy, that's why we're confused when we say spiritual energy, spiritual work, spirituality, and this and that. We can't like really anchor and pin it down, but I'm saying we can solve this better if we have a better understanding of all of these different words and how to really apply it in these conversations to really unpack what is trying to be described. And my argument is that the ancient Egyptians, obviously among themselves and intellectuals among them, when they broke down the human being as this composite being, this was their documentation and attempts to do exactly what I'm saying, to discuss the different aspects of the human being. The fleshly body is Khat. That's rots. That's the gross matter material. Then you have the Kemet, which is technically literally a shadow or a fan that casts a shadow, but is used metaphorically to of the thing that travels with the body, because a shadow, you can't outrun your shadow. Then you have the Ka, which people translate as spirit as well. Then you have the Ren, closely connected to the Ka, that's the identity. Then you have the Sahu, which is not a physical body, but it's a body housing something. And then you have the Ak, second, which is power. Ak is usually translated as spirit as well. And then the Ba. Ba is translated as soul, but as we can see in English, spirit and soul is used interchangeably. But in Egyptian, the Ba is not the Ka. But there's close relationships with all these things. Anyway, so I just wanted to share that. And hopefully everybody can see that. And matter of fact, I didn't even have it big on the screen. I thought y'all could see it big, but now it's too late. So let's see what else we got. So yeah, so I didn't know if you had something else to say. So I'm just going through the chat while I have time.
No, in regards to the Ka and Ba, my linguistic analysis shows that these two words come from two different concepts, right? What we're calling the Ba ultimately comes from those words mentioned before, for like heart, liver, you know, lungs, etc. Like that's where the word for Ba, spirit, comes from, and why it's usually in related languages a word for mind as well. The word ib, heart, mind, soul, etc., comes from that same root. It's just reversed, coming from a different dialect of the related languages. So that has one evolutionary path. Then you got what is called the Ka. The Ka, or the Kra or Kra, is actually a word for name. It derives from the verb meaning to speak, to say. And from this notion of to speak, to say, comes the derivative form of the word name. You had the word Ka, name. And from there, you have the word for quote unquote spirit, soul. And comparative work with other African languages confirms, not only on the semantic evolution, but of course the sound meaning correspondences. So that is a totally different concept, because this ties into more so of well, I guess it's all philosophic, but a rich philosophical conversation in which the name of a person really kind of crystallizes and encapsulates the purpose and the fundamental characteristics of the entity for which is being named, right? And so it's in essence the name in is a text file with a gang of code in it. And when you call that name, it it animates or enlivens a set of code and instructions that allow an entity to perform certain tasks, which is why not only in ancient Egypt, but in Africa, indigenous Africa more broadly, the name of an individual, the true name, is usually hidden. Because if you know someone's name, you can call upon it and activate it. And thus, make a zombie out of somebody. And so at least that's the belief. So this is why the calling of ancestors, this is the basis for the calling of ancestors, to keep their names alive, because when you activate them and keep their name alive, I mean, when you activate them by calling on their name on a regular basis, you continually enliven them, and then they are able to assist you in your everyday experiences or whatnot. So that's one aspect of it. Then there's the other aspect of it, to where, as I mentioned earlier, you can make a zombie. Not saying that this is real, but this is the underlying philosophy behind the name. So by understanding someone's name, there's even a text in ancient Egypt where Heru is um, struck by a snake. I think one variation was bit by an alligator or something like that. But definitely, saying the poisonous snake,
Scorpion.
or a
Yeah, scorpion.
scorpion, yeah. And Ra, his mother, Aset, is trying to heal him, but for some reason she can't. And so she devises a plan to try to get the healing power out of Ra, her father. And he sets him up by putting a snake out in his path and stinging him. And and so he uh is in excruciating pain and all of this other kind of stuff. And then him trying to do some other hecka magic work doesn't work for some reason, and she inserts herself in saying that uh, and I'm probably butchering the story, but she's saying that if you let me know your real name, and then we can I can get the poison out from the snake, and et cetera, et cetera. And so he gives her some bullshit names, and it doesn't work. So he finally tells her her real name, but in the process of saying his real name, he explicitly states in the text that my parents. So this lets you know that Ra has a mother and father, because he said my mother and father um basically hid my name so that neither a male or female sorcerer, essentially can abuse and control me. And so this is the importance of the name, the spirit in the form of someone's name. And so the etymology, to get back to that part of the discussion, is very essential for understanding these fundamental key concepts and how they evolve. So the Ba itself is the essential part of a person that essentially just animates them, but one's name, one's Ka, is that which gives you purpose.
Hmm.
And
Now,
go ahead.
no, no, no. I was just trying to add to what you were saying.
Go ahead.
It's interesting because although the Ka and the Ren may have emerged from the same concept pool or whatever, the way it's documented in text, they treated it different. I mean, not totally distinct, but they had two separate concepts of it that are related, even in the text. And so, and then as you're explaining what you're explaining, the Ren, the way that the text, when they talk about the Ren and separate from the Ka, the Ren becomes like, I translate the word Ren as identity, and I kind of stay away from just name, because name, when we just say name, that's like a little minor thing, because the way we deal with names today in modern times. But the Ren is the identity of it, of an entity, and it's like the core essence of what makes that entity what it is, separated from other entities, which is why we say identify. Like if we had a lineup, I have to identify someone. That means I'm distinguishing something from something else, and it captures that identity, and it's the identity of a thing. If known, you basically control it, and so that's the whole zombie thing or whatever. And by nature is secret, by its very own nature. That's like a what do you call it? An inherent property of it. And so the legend of Isis Ra and the snake, shows that. And Ra actually does give her his name, but in a very slick way. Like the key to his name is in the story itself. Like when he whispered those words to her and whatnot, and she was able to heal, like you said, heal Heru and stuff like that. That's when she became known as Lady of Magic and all of that. Um, but what was I saying? What was I going with that? Oh, but the name being the identity of a thing is what they emphasize, that is the key to immortality. Like if you remove the name, which I'm translating as identity, if you take the identity away from the thing, it is the thing, because the true essence of a thing is its identity. That's what makes it a separate ontological existence from any other thing in the universe. And if you remove that, it it goes back into the ocean of Nun, where it's undifferentiated and it has no existence in and of itself to be identifiable. And so ancestors names being remembered is really the identity to be remembered in the minds of the living. That's what I want to talk about in a show dedicated to that. Is the key to immortality is in the remembrance of the identity of an ancestor, and so the ancestor becomes its very own name or identity. And this is why it's important to build shrines to remember this, remember that, remember that. Because in Egypt, if you wipe somebody's name away, that was a way to deny the person immortality. So if we reverse engineer that, it simply means that mortality is secured by your name or identity being remembered. Going the other way around. So, and it's clear, and that's why Egyptians scratch people's names off of statues and off of temples and things like that. They're like, nah, after this generation of people remember you, a couple of generations down, nope, you're gonna cease to exist. Period. And that's the whole idea behind that.
What's interesting is that this, looking at the language itself, this is proof that it's multiple groups who interacted and emerged in the Nile Valley, because unbeknown to many Egyptologists, the word Ka and the word Ren are the exact same word. The what developed and became Ren is just a palatalized variant of the word Ka. And so when you have two groups who come together and converge over time into a single culture, what ends up happening is that vocabulary that essentially means the same thing, one of those words, when borrowed into the, you know, the dominant, the more dominant group, is then specialized into another uh, concept, but still ultimately related. And so it's you have that, and then, you know, you have the fact that, for example, in among the collagen and other groups, and I discussed this in Aluja Volume 2, in one of the concluding chapters. And I give other examples across Africa, including ancient Egypt. When we talk about reincarnation, for the most part, amongst these groups who I listed in the text, they, what is, you help to keep an ancestor alive by naming your children and grandchildren after ancestors. And because the name encapsulates the spirit of a collection of concepts and purposes, that those collection of concepts and purposes and themes and fundamental characteristics re-emerge in the life of the person whom is named the name of the ancestor itself. So that's an important part of the collective, you know, African cultural retention, you know, found in ancient Egypt, that you still see living amongst a group who was one of those many different so-called Nubian groups who lived and thrived and was a part of ancient Egyptian society, whose ancestors have since migrated south through Sudan into modern day Kenya, Uganda, and the western part of Ethiopia, known as the collagen collectively. But there's various different names for the subgroups, like the Pukut, the Marikit, et cetera, the Nandi. You'll see these various names of subclans of the quote unquote collagen people, but they all adhere to that fundamental thing, in that you continue the immortality of the soul, which is just the name of a person, in, you know, by naming your children and grandchildren after, you know, deceased ancestors.
Yeah, and see, like let's look at it in I guess in reverse. Would, like, this is a question, but people don't like this topic. That's what I'm saying. I want to have a whole show on this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of like a ad hoc conversation, but like really go in and stay within the scope of this topic. But here's the thing. The question is, what if the average regular Joe Blow Karen names her child after someone else? The name, will her doing that, will it invoke the spirit of the person of whom she named her child after, even if she don't know the person or whatever? And obviously the answer is no. And so there's two things with a name, and those two things with a name, and that's why I translate Ren as identity instead of name, because you have the form, which is either it written or spoken. Then you have the concept or the meaning, which are connected by a third element, and all three of those elements form a sign. And so what happens is, if a group of people don't have the same sign in their psyche, they're not going to understand the sign. There's going to be no transmission. And so there's more to it, and I'm saying this for everybody listening, than just a name. And there's a whole book on I forget, there's is a rose still a rose by any other name, something like that. That's where that saying comes from. And it explores the concept, Ferdinand Saussure's concepts of signifier and signified, with what words and language really is, and how people have to share these signs in order for something to be effective. And this gets into Heka and magic, because if I don't have the same set of signs in my mind, then, and from another person, then I'm not going to be conscious. It's not going to have an effect on me. So likewise, if Karen names her child Shaka Zulu, that doesn't mean Shaka Zulu is going to incarnate, or her child's going to exhibit the characteristics of Shaka Zulu that we think of, or whatever, or any of that. And so this is what I'm saying, that in ancient Egypt, I think that they did a very good job to their ability to sort this stuff out by separating the Ka from the Ren. Whatever they had in mind and assigned to the Ka, and whatever they had in mind assigned to the Ren, it evidently considered the things that we're saying right now. Even though diachronically it may come from, like you said, two different groups of people coming together, and and their lexicon will merge the concepts behind it and stuff like that. But those texts that deal with the different anatomy of the human composition are very important to really study, to really understand that. But I think people don't really get it.
And it was also interesting is where Heka itself is also a variant of the same word that gives you the word name. Ka name. So they're all, it's all the same word. But Egypt itself is really only made up, Egyptian, the language, is only made up of 10 words that basically has gone through different mutations and borrowings, interborrowings, and dialects and things. But there really is only 10 words in the whole Egyptian language that has just been stretched and maximized by prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and the like. But yeah.
Well, but that follows existence. I mean, think about it, because everything comes from is a what do you call it? A development of something else. This spiraling out to have these connections. I was looking for my diagram I always use to show this, and I'm telling you, I swear by this, that a lot of these discussions about these different topics like this, can be better understood if people were to be grounded in the concept of a sign. Because it's used for language and explain language, but it's also useful to explain everything. How there's two sides of everything. And I can't even find this diagram. I use it all the time, but I was gonna show it just to put people to what I always show it. But people be like, "Oh, okay, man, where is it?" And anybody who watched me explain this all the time, it's a triangle, and I have the signifier on one side, signified on the other, and it's a sign. And basically, I can't find it. Oh, here it is. Well, here's one of them. I'm just gonna use this as an example. Get this on here. Nope, not that. See, I did that energy thing like 4 years ago. It's 2018, man. But where is the one I'm talking about? Right here. Here we go. So this is the diagram, but I had some other things on it. I was explaining something different. But just to quickly give an understanding of this, is that a sign is really what a word is. What we're calling a word is really a sign, and it's made up of three elements. One element is the form, the other element is this meaning, and the third element is the link between the two. Without the link, the form and meaning are swimming on their own. And so it's a triad of elements that form a sign. Now, what we're calling language is really a set of signs, because a speech community of people are a group of people that share the same signs in their mind. If they didn't share the same signs in their mind, they would not be able to communicate. Hence, they wouldn't be a speech community. So when we say English language or Spanish language, we're really saying English signs and Spanish signs. And knowing that, we'll know that a sign consists of three parts. This is why we have a phenomenon that we call translation, where we're moving the concept side of the sign and giving it a new and equivalent form in a different language. That's called translation. So I'm saying this to say the same thing has to happen for any act of communication, whether it's from ancestors, we assume ancestors, or what have you. If you don't share the sign, it's not going to have any meaning to you. And the most important part of communication is the transmission of meaning. We just so happen, like Asar, what you said, we're not telepathic. And based on your hypothesis, you're saying that like this is this thought field that may be very weak for us, which is why we're not telepathic. But because we're not, we have to put a concept into a stronger field, which we call form, as a vehicle and transmit it. Mm-hmm. That's why we communicate. We can't do mind to mind concepts. We have to put it into a vehicle called a form and then transmit it. But putting it in a form, we create a link, and altogether it's called a sign. So in order for anybody to understand the words I'm saying right now, that means you share the same signs in your mind as me, and we call all that English. But the same thing with anything. And so that's why I get back to the name thing. So if a Karen names her,
be up here.
Oops.
Sorry.
Names her child Sakazulu or anything, it's not going to have an effect. And it's the same way like how people defend against curses and hexes. Because remember, curses and hexes are considered under the umbrella of magic. Under the umbrella of magic. And magic can only occur when there's a sharing of signs. Because if I don't understand, like people from different cultures, that's why they're not worried about like what you would do. Like that doesn't have an effect on me. Like I'm gonna give you an example, and this will be the last thing I'm gonna say. I'm gonna pass the mic on me. Like for example, in the Bible, this is what everybody can understand. In the Bible, God basically threatens Adam and Eve with death if they touch the tree of knowledge of good and evil. But the only way that he can threaten them is if they have a concept of death in their mind in the first place. If they never knew death, if death never occurred and they knew nothing about death, dying, the process of dying or consequence, then God could never threaten them. It would be totally ineffective for God to threaten them with death. Like, hey, you can't eat that, for in the day you eat thereof, you shall surely die. Like, how can God threaten them with that if they never knew about it in the first place? So you see, so the only way that could happen is if they already had that sign in their mind and had their understanding in their mind to know, okay, that's a consequence, and we better not do that. But if they didn't, all God's words will go in one ear and out the other. And guess what happened? It went in one ear out the other because they definitely still ate and became like, as the story goes, it became like God. But the serpent had to put them up on game. But anyway, so that's my point. My point is that if you don't even share the sign, you won't even understand or acknowledge or know about any consequences. So these curses, hex, and things like that that cultures may have from cultural group to cultural group, they be like, nah, I don't care about that. Another biblical thing when Moses and Pharaoh were ego tripping each other, and Moses performed a magic trick, and then, notice they call it magic as well. Moses did his magic with the staff, and the Pharaoh was like, "Man, please get out of here, man. We already know about that. We do the same thing." He snapped his fingers, clapped his hands, and then his folks put the staff down to change to a snake as well. But the Bible ones up and says, well, Moses' serpent or staff that turned into a serpent, it ate the Pharaoh's staff that turned into a serpent. That's the miracle. But the fact that a wood staff can change into a snake was supposed to be the point. Anyway, my point is that in order for any of this stuff to work, people really should get into understanding, like, for example, what I have on the screen. Let me just make it bigger. And I'll explain this again. I explained this so many times on our channel in different videos, but this is a very vital importance to understanding a lot of different things, not just with Egypt and stuff like that, but a lot of things. And it would help with a lot of these conversations, just communication, period. So anyway, I just want everybody to kind of understand that this diagram is specifically showing that, but I'm showing how the Rebus principle came about and how they detached the form of an open mouth that was once linked to the concept of a mouth. They clipped the link, and then they kept the form and started linking it to other concepts, which is only to represent the sound and not the object itself and stuff like that. So I think on this slide right here I was explaining the Rebus principle and what created the Rebus principle, the mechanism behind it. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So hopefully everybody got what I was saying. I probably confused the heck out of everybody.
Indeed. If I may share my screen, I'm not sure if this will allow for full screen. I guess it will. So hopefully to kind of go back to the the concept of the name, and we added the concept of Heka into the conversation. What I want to do is show a video clip from the now ancestor who died this year, the late Dr. Malidoma Some, who is of the Dagara people out of Burkina Faso, formerly Upper Volta in West Africa. And for those who are not necessarily familiar with him, he was a scholar on spirituality, but mainly primarily from the perspective of the Dagara people. And he has a very unique story, and he has a number of books which include, the healing wisdom of Africa. No, excuse me. The healing wisdom of Africa. We have Of Water and the Spirit. He has another book called Ritual. And, I think these are one of those, primary authentic texts from an African initiate who is able to clearly explain the underlying philosophy behind the expressions and motivations behind certain behavior and the like. And so the video clip that I am going to show is of him speaking. Where is he speaking? Because always speaking to white folks. He's in some country. He's probably where Ibby Ket is. If I remember correctly, where is he speaking?
It's on the big screen.
I'm sorry.
I said it's on the big screen now.
Alrighty, appreciate it. I forgot where he's speaking, but he's speaking somewhere in kind of like eastern part of Europe, right? And so he has to get a translator, for much of the talk. So if you ever want to hear, so he's talking about the concept of water and the spirit. It's a lecture that he's doing in Europe. He's originally again from Burkina Faso, but it's this point at around like 1 hour and 10 minutes into the conversation that is relevant to what we are talking about now. And so I want to share that and hopefully get some commentary, based upon and some reflections off of what he said here. So I'm going to play now. So please let me know if the sound comes through. Hold on. Let me reduce that again. There we go.
I knew that.
About that code.
Okay, so hold on. Let me give some preference to this part. So right now he's at the question and answer part of his talk. And earlier in the conversation, he talks about how, according to the tradition, we'll just use the word Heka for familiarity, that when performing Heka in the Daguerre, priestly tradition, you can't say words regularly. There's a certain type of tone and pitch that words must be said in order to be effective and to do what you intend for it to do, right? So that's the nature of the previous comment that he made, and now someone in the audience is asking him to revisit that and explain more deeply what that means.
Hey, but sorry, you better hold up. Pause it.
What'd you say?
Now I said you better explain who's who on the stage, because people gonna think that
Malodoma Some is of course the black person, or I should say the darker melanated person. Since we're trying to dispel racial stuff, but the darker of the two members that is on stage. So on the left is his interpreter, and on the right is Dr. Malodoma Some.
All right.
I think Kemet is in the audience somewhere, right here. Anyway.
Do you get the code with the initiation?
No.
How much it costs?
They say how much it costs. No, you have to become an elder. Yeah. In order to be able to break it down into pieces, there is what we call the discursive part, and then there is the melodic part.
Morate znati najprej stvar razbiti na dele in pravimo, da je najprej diskursni del in melodičen del tega.
Every time you speak, any person who speaks is singing.
Vsakič, ko nekdo govori, v bistvu poje.
There's a way in which you can determine the frequency of your verbal rendition. Okay?
In lahko določite vašo frekvenco vašega besednega izražanja.
And there's a specific frequency you have to stay with in order to trigger the opening of the other world.
In če hočete drug svet odpreti, morate se držati ene določene frekvence.
it's not like a sentence that you can say any way you like, and then it will happen.
Ne gre za en
No.
stavek, ki ga lahko kakorkoli izrečete in se bo zgodilo. Ne?
And by the way, it's dangerous. If you say it the wrong way, something else might happen. You could get zapped out of there.
In mimogrede je nevarno, če
Ja.
to z drugo frekvenco rečete, vas lahko zbriše od tam, prenese drugam.
That's why I think that the Dagara people are very smart in leaving that only to people who are supposed to go through initiation to learn how to control that.
Zato so Dagari dovolj modri, da to dovoljujejo samo ljudem, ki grejo.
Did you say something?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard it. I'm sorry.
Z iniciacijo.
And there are many verbal keys like this.
Ima veliko takih besednih ključev.
They're the one that could make you completely invisible.
So to taki, ki vas lahko čisto nevidne.
And they could even make you invisible to a camera.
In celo nevidne za kamero.
I'm talking too much.
Preveč govorim.
Forget what I say. Huh?
Sure.
Hell no.
Ni šans.
You make it very tempting. Come on. All right.
When did you get this name? When you were born or when you were initiated?
Before I was born,
Še preden sem bil rojen.
the name is figured out after the hearing ritual while you are still in your mother's belly. Yeah.
To ime starešine pogruntajo takrat, ko si še v trebuhu.
The name is later on after you're born whispered into your ear. Yeah.
Kasneje, ko se rodiš,
Ja.
ti prišepnejo tvoje ime v ušesa.
As you're born and you're being held, the elder woman whispered that name into your ear.
Ko se
Yeah.
rodiš in ko te
That's right.
držijo, ena starešina, ena gospa ti prišepne to v uho.
And then after that, you go into what they call the 72 hours isolation.
Potem pa greš do nečesa, čemu pravijo 72 ur izolacije.
Anyway, that's a different story.
Ampak tisto je druga zgodba.
What do you think about our names? Have you get also in this way the names here in Europe?
I'm assuming that the name you have must and could be traced down to some specific functions. Right?
In vprašanje je bilo, kaj si misliš o naših evropskih imenih, in odgovor je bil, predvidevam, da so povezani, da izhajajo vaše imena z določenih funkcij.
What I have learned was that
I'll be stopping soon, but he's getting on what the function of a name is.
a person's name is an energy signature.
In ugotovil sem, da ime osebe je njegov energetski podpis.
And so a name that is assigned randomly to somebody could affect that person positively or negatively.
In če naključno daste nekomu ime, to lahko vpliva na njega ali pozitivno ali pa negativno.
In my work, I've seen people who felt obligated to change their name because their name was bringing more trouble to them.
In lahko je dobro, sem pa srečal tudi veliko ljudi, ki so imeli občutek, da morajo spremeniti ime, ker jim je cel kup težav prineslo.
Yes.
So, do you see energy in negative and positive way? So they are both.
Hey, can you pause it? Can you pause it?
It's just an energy.
Well, energy is energy. The negative.
Asar, can you pause it?
Go ahead.
Yeah, man. So here's the thing. Now, listening to what he just said, he said that in his line of work, he knows people who felt it necessary to change their name because the name that they had was bringing them, stuff that some bad stuff, I guess, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But now, here's the thing. Now he didn't say this, but this is just a question that I would have or observation is that in order for a name to affect somebody, like if a person didn't even know that name was a name and assigned to them, it wouldn't have an effect on them. So it goes into the development of a sign. Like it's not until it becomes part of a sign in the psyche of the person that it will have an effect. Because like for example, if I assign if I'm a baby, because most babies are not going to remember anything whispered in their ear at a young age. They're just not going to remember it. Because I mean, if we ask everybody in the chat or whatever, do you remember whatever when you were a baby? Most people can't remember nothing when they were as a little baby. Um, so if somebody were to call a word out to somebody, which is a a noise until it becomes a sound. Like if I say a word to somebody who has no idea, never heard the word before in their mouth, it's really a noise. Like when animals speak to each other, lions roar, we call those noises because it's not a sign to us. It's not a sign like I got on the screen. That a sign, which is a signifier and a meaning. It has no meaning attached to that for us. So we call it a noise. That's what we define noises as. So if a name to a person is a name, but to the person receiving it, if it's not a name to them, if they don't perceive it as having any meaning or it's assigned to them, then how could it possibly have any effect at all?
Well, and that's one perspective. For others, and I think even amongst the Daguerre people, as informed to us by Maladoma Somé, it doesn't matter if you understand or not; it still affects you. So it's almost in the sense that you know how like because you don't know about the law doesn't mean that the law does not apply to you in the United States, and that
Right.
you are governed by it, and sometimes you won't know that you've broken a law until some kind of regulator, like a police officer, comes and informs you and gives you a ticket, right? So
Right.
the even without necessarily understanding the law, you know something's happened. And so for a lot of us, even without necessarily understanding our English names, we know that it's the names represent, at least for us, the continued colonization of the self as a result of historical situations and events. So, as the great KRS-One said in a lecture at Temple University, the first order in hip hop is to change your name, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same thing in the conscious community, or just when we become awakened to something, the first thing we do is change our name, because we understand that the name is essential to better capturing who we believe we are. And they're not going to name us things that are very empowering in a colonial sense. And so to recapture the names that empower you, you you adopt names, from your own cultural milieu, and in the case of African Americans, from other, cultures that are related to us, um, and then we move forward from there. So the while in one respect I can see that, but then in another respect, it is, regardless of us not understanding the names, because even in English, when somebody says their name in English, we never ask what does it mean. But as soon as we encounter somebody from another country and they tell us our name, the first thing that we ask is, what does your name mean? Because we assume that their name has meaning. We don't assume names have meaning in English.
But let me say this.
Go ahead.
So I have this sign diagram on the screen, right? And so like what I just said is not on the level of understanding the meaning of a name. It's more so having the understanding that the name is in fact a name, regardless if you understand its meaning. So, like for example, in most American households, children are named have names. Like we all have names, but we don't even know. Like you just said, we don't even know the meaning of the name, but we know it's a name. So that in of itself has meaning, and so that's what I mean. I don't mean knowing what the word itself means in terms of its semantic meaning, but we do know that it's a name, and us acknowledging the fact that it is a name is what gives it a meaning to us as well. So, like if I were to just type these random letters on the screen on the form side, this is the form side. If I type these random letters on there, this is in no way can have any understanding or anything to me, because one, I don't know what this means, period, and then also I don't even know that the concept behind this is supposed to be a name. So the concept of this on this side will be that it's a name, like it's something that I am called upon by and whatnot. If I don't even have that understanding, then this will have no, it won't exist. It will have no registration in me or whatever. It can have no effect. Like in your analogy about law, the laws are like even in your example, the law only has an effect or applied when it's at the process of being enforced. So until that time happens, it doesn't exist. Like to the like if I don't know the law, and but I'm breaking a law, but I don't know I'm breaking a law, nothing's going to happen until the moment of the enforcement, where I'm told, and when I'm told, that's when it becomes a sign. Now it has meaning and whatnot. Now we got laws of nature that if I'm unaware of, and I break those.
I was just going to give that example. Like
Yeah,
it wouldn't matter if you were aware of gravity. That so
right,
it goes back to so ultimately what this conversation is a different way of asking the philosophic question. If a tree falls in the forest and no one is there to hear it, does it make a sound?
Right. And that is the example used when it comes to communication. That actual example is used in the discussion about signs. It does it make a sound? And so what it forces you to do is to really reflect on the definition of sound. Is a sound a sound even if it's never perceived, or is sound dependent upon it being perceived? That's just really saying the same thing, but in a technical way. A sound, something hits the ground. If there's nothing to perceive the sound, does it still make the sound?
If there's not a receiver,
right?
Because
it's
because or for example, a sound ultimately is just the propagation of molecules through the medium of air, right? And it like you can have, for example, so how do I want to word this? If I see somebody drop something, right, and I have an instrument that detects sound, but let's say I'm deaf and cannot perceive sound, the propagation of the movement of the molecules through the air still happens, but we only perceive sound, or we say sound happens as a result of the vibrating of our eardrums, which and see and here's another thing which actually links us to computers, because the vibrating of the eardrum or whatnot is now converts that energy into electrical impulses and is interpreted by the brain as such. And that's the exact same thing that happens when we speak into the microphone to do these very podcasts. You have this molecules of sound vibration, it hits the coils of the microphone, it converts it to electrical impulses, which is then converted to the ones and zeros, and then a process happens and is interpreted on the screen, and then it sends it back out to us in that same fashion. So now it's electrical impulses that is emerged out of the speakers as, you know, the propagation of molecules through the atmosphere, and it comes to our ears and returns on the other end as sound.
Mm-hmm.
And so
mm-hmm.
No, go ahead.
No, I'm saying that's I'm agreeing with that, and it goes to this point, because that same famous saying is used in Saussure's explanation of language, because I think between him and later linguists on the same subject, they asked the question that I have on the screen: is language a phenomenon that must be experienced? In other words, does language exist independent of the successful encoding and decoding of concepts being transmitted? Or is that what language is when concepts are successfully encoded and decoded? That's the two philosophical fundamental questions. Does language exist independent of that, or is that actual language when that occurs? And that's the same thing about the tree falling. If a tree falls and hits, does it actually make a sound if it's not perceived? If our definition of sound is the perception of these vibratory pressures through a medium called air or whatever, or does it happen independent of any perceiver? And you know, those are philosophical.
Well, it can happen. Well, not necessarily the language, because, you know, ultimately at the end of the question is this concept of community. And so, you know, you can only have language within the context of community, and two or more people agreeing that this is what the codes that we're saying and stuff is going to mean. So you can have, you know, the question is, can you have language with a single person?
No.
You know, like, does language exist? You just making stuff in your head, and you know, even if you come up with, you know, words or whatnot, or other written types of symbols, without anybody else agreeing that that's what that means, could that be perceived as a language?
No. That's the question. That's the same question. That's the same question.
Yeah.
So language, and it kind of borders along the word communication. Language and communication successfully, you can't do that alone on an island, you know, in your own existence, because then that's not language.
But at the same time, one could argue that you can create the language by yourself. The language exists. It's just that you don't have a second party to transmit and for them to agree on the meaning.
Yeah, and that's what they are. Some argue. They say that's not the definition of language. They would call that something else until that happens. And that's the sway between the different schools of, I think it's semiotics, or I forget the French term for this study, but they got two different camps. One is saying
it's always two camps.
Yeah,
it's never three camps.
Yeah, it's the camp that defines language as the successful encoding and decoding between entities or whatever, and then there's those who say it exists independently, like how you just described, where you can create the language even if there's nobody that agrees with it or there to agree with. But how the terminologies are defined, it depends on what school you're gonna find yourself in, because because the school that's describes it how you just described it, they don't use the word sign. Like they don't have that whole structure and that nomenclature at all, because that's not a sign. A sign is something that has form and meaning and a link between the two, and it has to exist in the mind of someone else in order for it to be transmitted. Otherwise, no transmission, no experience of language. I think they call it lingua or I'm gonna get the names real quick. But let me stop sharing this on here. But yeah, it's two terms that they use in French. One is
It's parole and
yeah, there you go. Yeah, there you go. Those two, parole and the one for like we say parole, and then language or
yeah,
langue. Exactly. Those two things is where the shift between these two schools of thought, you know. And but I guess my first point though is everything we're talking about. I don't know who is following along with what we're saying right now in the chat, but one point I would like to make is, and a salute to salute chant for the super chat. You know, I don't advertise the super chat, and sometimes I forget we even have it. So I really appreciate it, because that's completely unsolicited super chat. And just so you all know, any super chat donations that come on this channel, we use it to purchase books. Okay, so as it accumulates and we purchase books, I will be showing you all the books and everything like that. And I encourage people to get these books. You know, get your research tools up. But what was I saying? Yeah, parole and lang. I forgot what I was saying now. My point though for everybody is, please do some basic study of this stuff, and you know, maybe I'll put some resources up there. But I think people need to understand, because Asar, even in your work of comparative linguistics, you have, in order to even do that work, you have to understand form and meaning in order to trace out the diachronic history of words within a language, and then cross compare languages and so on and so forth. So that's like a given in the work that you do. But what I'm stressing is that understanding form and meaning, or these two sides of a coin, it really useful for everything, for a lot of things we talk about, not just specifically, you know, historical comparative methods and doing that kind of work, but understanding a lot of different things, even in our conversation of spirit and even God. Any ambiguous concept or terms or becomes ambiguous, soul, spirit, God, pray, and all that kind of stuff that people get tripped up on. If people understood this, I think we would make a lot more headway in these conversations. They would really have a better understanding of things, because then we won't say things, and then we'll have respect for conceptualizations by different groups of people, and we'll even figure out if the translations are correct, because all the translation is the matching on the concept side of signs. If I had to define translation in one sentence, I would say, you know, the matching or pairing of the concept side of signs between two different groups of signs or set of signs called languages. And then, you know, and I always show examples like the Spanish. We have the word casa. We have the English word house. We translate house into casa and casa into house because they match concepts. The concept is a square building, a rectangle shaped building that has volume where you can get into, has windows and a door and a roof. basically. And we match that concept for the group of signs we call Spanish and the group of signs we call English, and we just equalize or set up an equation on the form side. The concept side is a match, but then we equate the form. So house, House, equals Casa. And we set up that equation and we call that translation. You know, and so the art of translation is trying to get as tight as possible on matching concepts. And that's a skill. You got to be skilled at that. What is going on? Oh, you got some work going on outside. I hear a lot of noise outside. But I'm gonna have to go in a second. So I don't know if you have anything else and stuff along these lines.
No.
Well, yeah, hey, but listen, we're gonna have to revisit it. So if you ever find yourself talking about this, let me know, and vice versa, because I wanna have like a specific, more narrowed discussion, on this, because when I do this Kemet and chill, I'm just basically addressing the chat, answering questions and stuff like that. We kind of go all over the place, but I do want to have a focused conversation on what we just talked about and how we got here before, which is on the spirit and ancestor thing. I definitely want to have that conversation. I'm going to, and I know people are not going to like some of these things because Asar, I know when we first addressed this on Facebook about spirit and energy, everybody went bananas. They're like, "Oh man, what you talking about?" And then we show resources like, "Oh man, that person's not a real physicist and whatever," and stuff like that. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember all debates and conversations in the streets.
Yeah, man. So people swore up and down that they don't know that energy is a measurement. They're like, nah.
This is something I want to ask though, a series of physicists. Like, given that we know that is not an entity, why do they keep wording it as if it is an entity? And I think that adds to the confusion. So when they're saying, when when we talk about dark energy, and this is what is stretching compelling the universe to expand, and et cetera, et cetera. They treat it as if it is an entity unto itself at that point. But once you get into the real scientific work, they understand it in a different way. But
the boy explain that. What's his name? The guy that you quote with the gray afro.
Oh,
Sylvester.
Yeah, Sylvester. Dang it.
Gates.
Yeah, Sylvester Gates. James Sylvester Gates.
Yeah, he said it. He says he said, "Look, when we tell you something, we know we're lying to you."
Yeah, I know. But it causes confusion, and I'm the reason why I brought that up is so that we can update it, because we have scientific concepts that would fit it, but they don't want to fit it in that way. So like if you're saying that spirit is an entity and that it is an energy, you can only say it as being a property of something. So if there's something that is invisible to our everyday experience, that has movement and motion, and that causes things to be and move, you can only be talking about an atom. And so an atom would be a spirit, but they don't want it. They want it to be something else.
Right.
So by definition, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. I was gonna say I think science is it bends a bit now that science has grown a PR aspect to it with Neil deGrasse Tyson and others who actually engage people and stuff. So I think that we can force that to happen. You know what I'm saying? I think the interplay between scientists and coming out their boxes and engaging people more and more, I think we can force that. That's just my optimistic self talking. I think we can force the conversation because I see some of them hint to it. I know that I'm a fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson, and I can see on some of his interviews where he's jokingly says things, but he be serious at the same time. Where he's like, I don't know why. We want to keep things simple. That's why we call a hole that's dark, we say it's a black hole. He has those things, and so I think through time we could force it. Because remember, science at one point, science was this like up in the air, nose up in the air type of thing, like I'm smarter than you type of sentiment. And it was like, okay, we'll just give everybody else crumbs and hand-me-downs and explanations, and that's where Sylvester Gates or James Gates that's where that sentiment kind of comes from. It's like, we'll tell you whatever you want to hear, knowing that it's really not that, but and stuff. But I think hopefully that'll wane away a little bit, but we got to force it. And I would love to see that day, because it would help out in these conversations on the street level with these arguments that people are having with spirit and stuff, and it'll just help people out. It'll help people out, help people out. Well, I just want to quickly see if anything noteworthy in the chat is going on. But listen, everybody who's listening on the chat, I'm definitely gonna have to wind this up. And I may go live later, but I want to just peruse through the chat. If I missed your question, which or comment of importance, please forgive me. Take a screenshot like Bugsy did and send it to me. Like, put it in my face. Bugsy emailed me. He's like, man, you didn't miss my question. Yeah, I done missed a lot. It's too many to scroll back up. But hopefully everybody enjoyed this chill talk. Sorry, I appreciate you coming through and adding in. I know everybody look forward to hearing from you and stuff like that. I think between everything that we're doing, I think people are I think we're changing the slowly changing the vibe on the YouTube streets though. Because that's the feedback I'm getting. I think because I'm getting good feedback. I get feedback even with your name mentioned, Smash names mentioned lately, like me, you, and Smash as of late. People are like, yeah, man, I enjoy your conversations also with Smash. Smash goes on in the morning and this, that, and the third, So obviously we're having some kind of impact in the YouTube streets. So I'm just gonna keep it up, keep it going, But yeah, so if everybody here, make sure you thumb up the video. We got like 40 people, 35 people now watching. We should definitely have that as many thumb ups, or maybe you thumbed it down. Maybe that's why I don't see it. But anyway, share it. This is the vibe. This is what we're gonna do. So this is a series. So just so you all know, this is a series of lives that I'm gonna try to keep up, which is Kemet and Chill. It's just where the chat, you direct the conversation. It's pure ad hoc. I'm not coming live under this series with a pre-planned presentation or nothing. We're gonna dive in and y'all direct the traffic. Okay, I'm in the passenger seat. I'm just gonna share what I know, what I don't know, help you out. Maybe we could study it together, look for it together live online if I have time. We could pull stuff up. I got plenty of books. I got plenty of physical books, plenty of PDFs. If I got it, we can get into it. So that's it. But all right, so I appreciate it. I'm gonna. Oh, we got Emmy Cat popped on, man. Man, what's my Emmy Cat? You popped in here all late and whatnot. my fault. I'm leaving the woman out of the picture. Shame on me, boy. Man, all y'all need to gang up on me and beat me down for that, boy. I apologize, Emmy Cat. You got the whole floor. The floor is yours. We gonna clear the room. There you go. Go ahead.
Yeah, shame on you. We're gonna cancel you. Well, no, I wasn't planning to show up, but I just I came on real quick just because of the discussion that you guys were having on, just what language is and just that, and because we've talked about it so many times, and we've done it. I think we've done two good videos on what a word is and what language, the mechanics of language. But I just wanted to come in and say that obviously because we've talked about just breaking that down properly where people can understand it. We wanted to do going to do a video, a proper video. But what I've done is I'm doing a 5-part video that's just going to walk people down to from just languages and then writing systems and things of that nature, translation and all that. So it's a 5-part video. I think the first video might be out today or maybe tomorrow, and then the rest I'm still editing on those bits. But it will just be simplified, explained for dummies kind of thing, and so that people get to understand, because it's really really vital that people understand just what a sign is and what language is, because a lot of people get into the discussions of language, of all that kind of stuff, of Sesh, Medew, Netcher, but that basic fundamental is just not down yet. And there's a lot of things that if you don't know, you find yourself not sometimes understanding and then sometimes not understanding the conversation. So I just wanted to say that we have a 5-part video that will just be coming out, and it's going to walk people down all that kind of stuff.
All right, there you go. So y'all see what's coming down the pipeline, coming out the sky. We're gonna shower, rain down. Information's gonna rain down. So listen, we're all in this together. We're all learning together. Some of us have more tenure in these focused areas than others, and we need to learn to lean on each other for our strengths. And wherever we're weak at, lean on somebody else who's strong at. And we should approach all of this stuff as a team and not as adversarial opponents. I'm all for having fun. I'm all for even the spirit of, and I'm using the word spirit, in the spirit of debate, because I can appreciate what debating is really all about, real debates that is, and I know the benefits of a real debate. That's just not what I see in these YouTube streets, but in the correct spirit of debating, the correct spirit of teamwork, and us all learning together and respecting areas of focus among each other, and exercising good character and humility at the same time, I think we can get really, really, really far on all these different topics, and overall we want to come up with things that will help our lives, mentally, physically, whatever the case is, help make us better people, and so I think we can do it if we just do it. Nothing to it but to do it. But anyway, so I gotta sign off, and I'm probably channel hop later on, and if nobody else is live, I'll probably go live and like zoom in on a couple of these different issues and kind of drill down on something. All right, so you all stay tuned. If you all hanging out, you want to hang out, appreciate it. Y'all come through. So with that, I'm gonna say, sorry, you got anything last? Any last regard? Oh, sorry, I got a question. Well, maybe this be what you could say on as the last thing. The whatever happened to the one One Africa or whatever the presentations that was scheduled was canceled or something, or something happened. They had to move the date. What's
Yeah.
up with that?
So it is officially. Let me show the
Yeah, the
flyer
flyer.
real
Yeah.
quick. Social media uploads, and boom. I'll say now. I will
And
share my
Mika,
screen.
yeah, Mika understands. I got this. Yeah, Emicat told me I'll be right at home in Kenya, boy, because people in Africa are known to have long goodbyes. All right, let me so put this on the big screen. There you go.
So, yes. So for those who don't know, we were supposed to have a tour and conference in Egypt in February, but due to some internet hateration, We had to postpone the event and cancel the conference that was scheduled, at the end of the conference. And so we have since moved it to Detroit, Michigan. And it's going to be it's a 2-day event. It's going to be on Saturday, April the 30th, and Sunday, May the 1st. So at the end of next month. And a few of the speakers have changed. So part of the original lineup is Dr. Leonard Jeffries and his wife, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, Brother Jabari Osazi, Brother Infodishi Jehuti Mess, and Bayena Bello, as well as Dr. Theophilo Benga. However, due to scheduling and other reasons, some of the people who were part of the original lineup, like Dr. Solange Ashby and Dr. Wade and Vera Nobles, as well as Anthony Browder, are no longer a part of this particular set of lectures. So they have been replaced by Dr. Chike Okua, Dr. Susan Tata, if I'm saying that correctly, Dr. Malefe Kete Santi, and Dr. Milana Karenga. And so, of course, included is myself. And so, 2 days will be a total of, I think, 5 speakers each day. And so it's going to be a powerful weekend. So if you are not in the surrounding areas, or you don't plan on taking the physical trip to see everyone live, it will be live streamed. And so you will have to go to hoppyfilm.com to purchase your tickets, regardless if you're doing live or in person. Excuse me. The stream live or in person. And so that's hoppyfilm.com, HAPIFILM.com. And so that's pretty much all I have right there.
All right, good. Now, people gonna be like, "Oh, Asar just photoshopped his image on there. He ain't really gonna, present nothing."
Exactly.
That's what people gonna say. It's funny.
So these are some heavyweights, and I'm still the youngest, even with the new folks on here.
You got the fringe linguist. They call Dr. Theophilo Benga, disrespect him. They say Dr. Asante is an Afrocentrist and he just do the blackology stuff. Osar Motep, he's a pseudo-linguist. I mean, it goes on and on. It's just crazy. But we're going to change all of that stuff. But I look forward to that, though. And I'm definitely going to be in watching. So I'm definitely, I'm not going to miss that.
Indeed.
All right. But I'm out. It's 6 o'clock. I was trying to end on top of the hour. So I'm gonna say Shimon Hotep to everyone. So like I said, I'll be YouTube hopping, or I'll strike up a live, focus on something. So inbox me, y'all, if y'all keep things going. All right. So I'm gonna say Shimon Hotep. I'll see y'all tomorrow later on. All right.
Yeah, man.
Plato said that when you go to Kemet school, you became more alert. You more wake up, your spirit wake up. And you became a more human being. That's your character is built in a school. future, we need to know some Meroitic too. We need to know Medew Netcher.